Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zero to Empire podcast. On this episode, I have Chuck Knabusch, and he's actually the host of the Unsolicited Feedback. And in this episode, he's going to be talking about his background, what inspired him to become the host of that, as well as what inspired him to become an executive coach. So, Chuck, what actually made you get started with all of this, with the hosting, the executive coaching, and more?
Yeah, Samuel, I retired in 2018 from Lazy Boy Incorporated, spent a year kind of traveling and doing the retirement gig. My wife suggested that I needed to either find a job or get a hobby. And she was right. Realistically, I just needed a little bit more purpose in my life. I needed something rather than just sit around all day, every day, or just travel. So it was perfect timing. My former employer called me back and said, "Hey, would you come back for a project?" I did. That was from like August 2019 until February 2020. COVID hit. They said, "Hey, we got to let you go." I said, "No problem." 3 4 months later, they called back and said, "Hey, we've got so much customer demand when we reopened up our furniture gallery stores. We don't know what to do. Our current facilities aren't going to be able to handle it. Would you help us open up 2 more facilities?" I said, "Sure." I'd shut down facilities before, I'd moved facilities before, but I'd never opened one from scratch. So what a great challenge. Worked with them for another 15 months or so. Had a great time, got 2 facilities up and running. And then they said, "Well, that was kind of the end of this engagement." I said, "I understood, but I wanted to go ahead and continue to give back. Not maybe necessarily always to such a big company, but maybe to smaller companies, maybe smaller organizations and businesses and business leaders and founders who are struggling out there." So I started my own business, 1310 Business Solutions, and started with doing a little bit of consulting, expanded that into some executive coaching. Recently, I've started my own podcast, Unsolicited Feedback, in order to go ahead and do outreach, because I think there's a lot of things that smaller organizations do very well. I mean, they can pivot, they can flex just because they're smaller, but there's a lot of things that they feel that they're a little overwhelmed by, because a lot of times it can be one person wearing multiple hats at a time. And so they kind of sometimes struggle because they don't have a department of staff to throw at a problem, or $100,000. So that's where I come in and let them know that there's a lot of solutions out there. There's a lot of alternatives. There's ways to get things done, and it doesn't have to cost $100,000, and it doesn't have to go ahead and take a staff of 20 to accomplish it.
Yeah, that's a very solid background, and I'm glad that you're able to pivot, and now you're on your own podcast host as well as your own coach. So that's very solid to hear. And what was that moment that you realized that this is more than just a side business or a side project?
To me, it's a lot of fun. Um, Being able to go ahead and help others. So, is it my calling? I don't know, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I like to go ahead and balance it in. I mean, this is probably the best work-life balance I've had ever in my career. So my wife and I, we get a chance to go ahead and travel and do the things that we've always wanted to do while still helping others. And the funny thing is, most people don't want somebody there 24/7 breathing down their neck. They need somebody to go ahead and give them a little push, or have somebody that they can bounce ideas and thoughts out of, or problems or issues. So I mean, that's why the executive coaching seems to work very, very well for both my schedule as well as somebody else's. And I've worked with consultants before, not running down like an IBM, but when IBM used to come to Lazy Boy, they'd be there 24/7, for as long as the engagement, and they were always looking for the next engagement and the engagement after that. And while that's great, that was a perfect model for IBM to use. That's not my model. I'm looking to go ahead and help an entrepreneur, a business leader, solve a problem or get the results that they're looking for, and teach them what they need to know, so I don't have to be there constantly.
That's true, and that sounds like a great lifestyle that you have going on with that business and life balance. And before this, you actually mentioned that you wrote a book called Hope is Not a Business Strategy. What made you start that book and inspired you?
It was after I had left, finished implementing those couple plants for Lazy Boy. I was working with a business coach. So obviously, although I espouse help, you know, having others get a business coach, I do the same thing. And this particular business coach said, well, to get authority, you needed to go ahead and tell everybody you're writing a book. Well, I do more than, I don't want to just tell people I'm writing a book. If I'm going to tell them, I'm going to actually do it. I mean, to me, it was an integrity thing. So after talking with the coach for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, I kind of felt I'd gotten to the point where we had talked about a lot of the different topics, and it was time to sit down at the keyboard and start writing. So I did. Took about 3 to 4 months to write it, and then about another 6 months between developmental edits, copy and line edits, and then working with another gentleman, publishing strategist, to go ahead and publish. But yeah, so I wrote the book it's called Hope is Not a Business Strategy. How to take control of your business so it doesn't take control of you. Because I see whether you're in corporate America or you're a solopreneur, it's frequently people kind of their work takes over their life. And I don't know that there should be kind of a work-life balance per se. It's not a balancing beam. I think there are times where you're going to do a lot more work than you're going to go ahead and do kind of the enjoyment. But there's other times you need to go ahead and find out what that balance is, but not fight for the balance. Kind of embrace what it gives you and embrace how it happens. I mean, a great example, we had a tornado hit a plant that I worked at. Well, for the 6 months following that, I had no really work-life balance. It was 100% work life. I mean, I was working probably 90, 100, 110 hours a week, but that's what the job called for at that point in time. Had a great team working with me. They didn't put in nearly those hours, but because I was kind of the team leader, wanted to make sure that, one, we kept all our employees getting a paycheck. We wanted to make sure that we were producing the parts that were needed by our other facilities to provide the goods and services to our customers. So realistically, in that short period of time, yeah, there was no balance. It was just all work life. But I've also understood that, okay, after that, it's time to take a break because you do need to go ahead and recharge. So work-life balance may not be 50-50. It might be 80-20 at some points in time. It might be 40-60. You just have to kind of understand where you are and where you're going through in that cycle.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And what does your consulting or coaching package typically look like for a new client?
Yeah, I focus basically on planning, leadership, and execution issues. Anything in the operational realm, anything that's a process that you guys repeat. So, I mean, it could be working customer service type issues. It can be, I mean, my background is certainly manufacturing. So I've worked with manufacturing companies. But anything that's a repeatable process is what I consider an operation and something that can go ahead and be improved. So if you're not getting the results you're looking for from your operations, generally I can go ahead and supply planning, leadership, and execution strategies to improve those results.
That's solid. And can you tell us a success story from one of your clients that you have right now or from the past?
I mean, relatively recently, I was working with a multi-million-dollar manufacturing company that produced educational furniture. They were looking to go ahead and implement lean. We needed to kind of back them up just a little bit and get them prepared before they went down that lean journey. They had a lot of employees who didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. So in that case, we started with job descriptions. We started with standard work instructions to go ahead and get them on board. They had a vice president of operations who was pushing materials. And again, nothing wrong with pushing materials to get them from point A to point B. but as their vice president of operations, probably not something that he should be doing on a regular basis. Occasionally, absolutely, everybody pitches in a small business to help out. But we wanted to go ahead and kind of solve the problem. Why did he need to go ahead and do that? So we spent some time working on that. We worked on leader standard work. What should the leader go ahead and be doing and looking at on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis to go ahead and get rid of those blind sides that we all have? Because we can't go ahead and see everything that we do from a 360-degree point of view. So we're going to have a blind side. So by bringing in an executive coach, we could go ahead and find out what those are and minimize those by working through a number of different strategies.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what's one powerful change that can instantly improve a struggling business?
Well, to me, it starts with planning. It really does. We have to understand what it is we want to achieve and be aware of where we are today. It's just like pulling out a map for a road trip. If you don't know your origin point, I don't care if you want to go to Chicago, but if you don't know where you're starting, which direction do you go? Do you go north? Do you go south? Do you go east? Do you go west? So you have to understand where you're starting and where you want to go ahead and go, and then plot that out. When a lot of small businesses, when they start to kind of plateau, it's like, hey, I want to grow. Well, why do you want to grow? So you have to kind of understand what it is they're trying to achieve and why they're trying to achieve it in order to go ahead and help them say, okay, these might be some of the next steps, or this might be an area that you need to go ahead and examine in your business that you're not yet prepared for that next level of growth. So let's do a period of time of preparation before you grow, because it may be something within the business that's preventing you from hitting that next level.
Yeah, I completely understand that. And when it comes to the biggest misconceptions about hiring a business consultant, what do you think they are?
Find somebody who fits, but somebody who's willing to go ahead and challenge you. You don't want somebody who's exactly like you that is going to go ahead and say yes to everything that you're going to do, because then you're going to pay a whole bunch of money to get the exact same answers that you already had. But pay somebody who's got a different perspective. So they're going to go ahead and say, hey, have you thought about this? Is this an area that you want to explore? Have you ever considered this? And sometimes you may say, yes, I have considered it, but have you considered it recently? Because business conditions may well have changed. I don't like to go ahead and necessarily repeat the same things we've done in the past, but on the other hand, we also want to say, has something changed? Because it might be worth repeating to do something all over again. So find somebody who's willing to have those conversations with you, somebody who's willing to challenge you, somebody who's willing to go ahead and see your vision and help you find the path to get there.
Yeah, definitely having a new perspective can change things for sure. And if you can go back and do one thing differently with the way you approach your businesses or your book or anything, what would it be?
Yeah, let's use my book for an example. I'm a first-time author, had never written a book before. And it would have been to reach out and find an expert, find somebody who's done it before, to get their insights, because I made a ton of mistakes. When I first wrote my book, it was like 50, 55 chapters. When I took it to my first editor, they're like, but Chuck, this is not the format of a business book. A good business book is about 12 to 14 chapters. And I got to thinking of all the business books I read, and I went back and pulled a number of them off the shelf, and they were absolutely right. But I had 50, 55 chapters. That was crazy. So working with the developmental editor, we were able to go ahead and rearrange the content and come up with that 12 to 14 chapter type of book. So it conformed. It was a lot more of what people were expecting. So, sometimes getting an expert really can go ahead and smooth out the road, at least for the foreseeable future. And that's exactly what I should have done. I didn't really have a great plan. I just kind of jumped in the water and I did it. Can you do that? Yes, there's so many entrepreneurs, so many business people who do that daily. But at some point in time, you're going to hit an obstacle that it's going to take some assistance to go ahead and get over. And that's where finding that coach, finding that consultant, finding that expert who has that knowledge, who's had taken those bumps and those bruises before, so to prevent you from getting them is a wonderful situation.
Oh, yeah. So having a mentor will definitely help cut the learning curve and make sure you're on the right path. So where
Absolutely.
where can people actually reach out to you if they want to get your coaching and your guidance?
Best place to go ahead is and find me is out on my website, 131013ten.com. You can reach out, shoot me an email at Chuck, CHUCK, at 13ten.com. Love to hear from you and just have a conversation.
That's perfect. Go check him out. Go book a discovery call with him and see how much he can help you benefit in your life. So thank you everyone for listening or watching in for this episode of Zero to Empire, and I'll see you on the next one.